Shanti. Good evening and a very warm welcome for our weekly sessions, nightly sessions that we have every Sunday evening at Feel Well, Heal Well Meditation Lounge. And we have been having these sessions for the last few months, and I know some of you join every week and some new join every week as well. We have this session today live on Facebook, so if you want, you can go back to it and watch it again as well. And today we have the speaker we have for today is Dr. Shwetank Agarwal. He's a cardiac anesthesiologist as well as an intensivist from South Carolina. And he's been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for quite a few years. And he has conducted many workshops as well. And so he'll be talking about a very unique and a very interesting topic, quantum physics, and also understanding the power of belief. And so we'll hear it from him as well. I'm also excited to hear what he has to talk about. And as well, we have Dr. Kala Iyengar, who is the director of Peace Village, our retreat center of Brahma Kumaris in upstate New York. And she'll take us through the meditation experience. And she's also has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation. She's our senior Raj Yoga meditation practitioner and has been practicing for the last 30, 40 years. So now I would like to welcome both Dr. Shwetank Agarwal as well as Dr. Kala Iyengar. Welcome, Dr. Shwetank and Dr. Kala.
Om Shanti and good evening, everyone. I think you've had a very warm welcome already. And it's been a real privilege having you join us. And I think you must have gathered this by now, that we as a group of people putting these programs together are learning and gaining perhaps even more than what you are doing. So it always happens, isn't it? You think that I know everything, but when you start sharing with others, it's then that you really face yourself in terms of your own practices. And I think this is what's happening in the last few sessions or many sessions, as far as I'm concerned, that we, all of us as team members, have really looked very deeply into what happens in our own mind when we are, whether in front of people or whether we are doing what we are supposed to do, but really how can we do it better? So, and this is all we are sharing with you. So I think some of you may know that this is all not rocket science, although what Dr. Shwetank is going to share today might be rocket science, but most of what we have been sharing is very simple, common sense and spiritual sense, so to speak. So hope that you are continuing to take benefit and hope that we can be on this journey and you can also help us to enhance and fine-tune these programs as we move along. So thank you so much, Dr. Shwetank, for being with us and presenting today. Looking forward. Welcome.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Dr. Kala. I appreciate you always starting these sessions on such a beautiful, positive note that kind of sets the rhythm for the rest of the session every time, and the way you end these sessions, wrapping them up, and then taking us through a deep meditation experience. So I always appreciate that. And I also appreciate Dr. Neha introducing me. I promise you that my talk won't be too complicated. I'll break it down quite a bit to make it real easy for you. So let me at least get my PowerPoint up on the screen. So what I was hoping to talk about today, and that's my goal, is to talk about quantum healing and the power of belief. These are huge topics in itself, in themselves, and I don't think I can do enough justice to them in this short period of time, but at least I want to introduce a few things for all of you, and then you can experiment with them on your own as well. And if later you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. But before even I go into quantum healing, the quantum part, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the aspect of healing. How many of you really think of yourselves as healers? Because I know from the conventional medicine approach that I practice, I don't think I or any of the other people that I know think of themselves as healers. In fact, healing isn't, that word itself is not even on our radar screen. We think about treating symptoms. Somebody has a headache, we fix that headache with Tylenol. Somebody has fever, fix it with Tylenol again, and any other problem, fix it with something else, and so on and so forth. Or on the other hand, we get fixated in curing. But healing is something that we really don't understand very well ourselves. But I think some of you who are probably in alternative medicine may understand healing a little more and maybe talking about healing. But I want to even say that I'm beginning to understand that you don't even need to be a healthcare professional to be a healer, really. You can be a healer simply being who you are, really, just helping heal others around you, helping create the space and opportunity for people to go back to their natural rhythm of their lives is healing in itself, and anyone can do that. So for a little bit, I invite all of you, if you have not done so ever before, or even if you have done so, do it again now if you can, to see yourself as a healer. Yeah, healing others. But before that, before healing others, in a way, we have to be healers for ourselves. We have to be able to heal ourselves. We cannot fix other people's brokenness unless we can, and we have to some extent fixed our own broken states. And so I feel that um, taking this perspective of quantum healing has helped me a lot, and I hope it will help you all as well. So let me give you a little bit of background of this quantum healing thing. This was a term that was coined, I think, in 1980s, maybe, by Deepak Chopra. And the reason why he used this word, in a way, it is really a fancy term to describe the the effect of mind on our bodies and our health. Because the way he has described is that that the quantum, the word quantum, is the smallest unit of anything. Like energy, for example, for electricity, the smallest unit would be electron. For light, the smallest unit would be photon, and so on and so forth. And so similarly, the smallest unit for the mind are thoughts. Thoughts could be in the form of ideas, beliefs, likes, dislikes, prejudices, feelings, and so on and so forth, or even beliefs. So all of these have a profound effect on the functioning of the body. And based on that, really, if you see, we as human beings are really psychosocial entities, because how we think kind of affects to a great deal how we interact with people around us. But it's not just psychosocial, we are psychobiologic entities as well. Yeah, and if you look at the biologic aspect, when we think thoughts, the thoughts that we think have a tremendous effect, and we've seen this across the board in numerous studies, that they affect our physiology. So we become psychophysiologic entities. They affect our biochemistry. They affect our pharmacology, yeah, because in a way we have a beautiful pharmacy within ourselves. And when we think certain thoughts, we create certain chemicals, certain neurohormones, neuropeptides, which affect pretty much every cell of the body. And we also then create our pathologies, yeah, all the diseases that we have. and then we also create effect on our hormones and the endocrine system and the neurology that we have, the nerves, the functioning of the nervous system, the immunology, and these have given rise to this whole new field of psychoneuroimmunology, psychoendocrinology, and so on and so forth. And in fact, now we also call this as another fancy term as contemplative neurosciences. But also, if you would agree with me, many of you would, who have heard or read a little bit about this, that our thoughts, our beliefs, our intentions can even change the expression of our genes. Yeah, this is a whole field of epigenetics, and which means the effect of the environment on our gene expression. So even though the genotype doesn't change, yeah, our genetic structure doesn't change, it definitely has a lot of effect on the phenotype or the genetic expression of our genes. Yeah, the phenotypic expression, if you will, of our genes. And so it's not just the external environment, it's our inner environment as well. So we know for sure, and I'm sure you all would agree with me when I say that our thoughts definitely affect our body, our functioning. But I want to look at quantum healing from a totally different aspect, because in my past 20 years of practice of Raj Yoga meditation, I have realized that there's a whole different aspect of healing, yeah, which I find that, and I like to call it as, or I like to describe quantum healing as healing which comes from stabilizing ourselves in quantum consciousness. And so what is this quantum consciousness? I'm going to take you through a little bit of quantum physics to help you understand that. So let me help you understand how this works. Let me move this controller away a little bit because it's coming in the way. So if when we see things around us, like for example, car, house, uh, you, me, all of us are made up of molecules. You see, we are all conglomerates of molecules, which, when broken down further, are made up of atoms. And then when we go further deep into the atoms, we find that there are subatomic particles that make these atoms. But what we have realized in through the study of quantum physics, which is all quite a bit new physics, and in a way it is frontier science, that at the core of all of these particles, the atomic, subatomic particles, there is really no matter. There is just pure energy, which we call as quantum field. Yeah. So what it really tells us that at the core of everything that we see in the entire universe, all the objects that we see, all the human beings that we see, plants, animals, at the core of everything, there is just energy. Your energy, I'm energy, we are all energy. And from a Raj Yoga meditation point of view, we know that you, when you say you, me, we see ourselves as this physical body, which has so many different parts, so many different organs, again, lots of molecules, lots of atoms, lots of subatomic particles. But at the core of our existence, we are just pure energy. And from Raj Yoga point of view, we say we are souls. We are life forces, we are life energies. That's who we are. And now you see there is this one common quantum field that binds us all together, that connects us all together. What that means is that we go from the distinctness of the car, house, you, me, and all other objects that we see in the world to one unified field of total connectedness, going from discreteness to inseparability. And in a way, think of it If I can, if you can, if we all can go from this physical consciousness, this gross consciousness, that we are these objects, we are these physical forms that we see in the mirror every day, down, further down into molecules at atomic, subatomic level. And then as soon as we enter into the quantum field, what happens is we get connected to the entire energy of the universe, the entire intelligence of the universe. That's the quantum field. Now you think of it, this quantum field also has the intelligence of God connected to it. So when we enter into this quantum field, we can tap into the energy of God. We can and we can tap into the energy of anything and everything in this whole universe. So we can get all the healing that we are looking for just by entering into this quantum field, or in a way, creating the quantum consciousness. And so here we need to understand a little bit of what we call as particle wave duality. So what happened is when the scientists, these quantum scientists, were trying to look at these particles under all these experimental conditions, they found that these particles actually would go in and out of existence as if they were entering into a different dimension, different universe altogether, and then coming back. But what they found was that these particles don't really even exist as particles, but they rather exist as a wave of possibilities, wave of infinite possibilities. And every time when they would want to look at the particle, or when the particle needs to do what it needs to do, then the wave would collapse, which they would call as, and they still call as, the collapse of the wave function. So, in other words, that particle would actually live as a wave of infinite possibilities and then would collapse to a particle of experience. Yeah, is it making sense? Yeah, so what it really means is that we all, if we see, it's not just the atom of an object, but all of us at our core, we exist, each one of us exists as a whole field, a wave of infinite possibilities. And then we collapse into the reality that we want to create for ourselves as we live our lives. Yeah. So we too, in a way, are totally infinite in what we can be as soon as we enter into the quantum field. And this also takes us to another very important concept in quantum physics called as quantum superposition. That is, again, we, because of us is an existence of being a wave of infinite possibilities, we can be anything and everyone in this quantum field. Yeah, so in a way, we can be totally healthy, we can be totally diseased. There's a whole spectrum of infinite possibilities that become available for us as we enter into this quantum field. So in this quantum field, there's another very interesting phenomenon called as the effect of the observer observed effect. And that is up till now in classical physics, which I'll compare in a little bit, that we always thought that the observer and observed are two distinct entities, and there is no effect of the observer on the observed. Yeah, but what we have found through quantum physics is there is a profound effect. So if, for example, in these experiments on light, the light can exist for a long time. There was a lot of controversy whether light exists as a particle or light exists as wave. And so I've just broken this very famous experiment called as Young's double slit experiment into its simplest terms. Yeah, so here there are two observers observing light, and based on the consciousness of the observer, if say observer one is looking at light as a particle, the light would behave as a particle. And if the observer two is looking at the light as, or with the perspective, with the thought of it being a wave, the light would behave as a wave. Yeah, so in other words, the consciousness of the observer created the reality for the observer when observing light. And that's exactly what happens at the macro level too. So light as particle versus light as wave. And so this is important to understand that from the classical physical model or the gross model of our physical consciousness, what it does is it kind of separates consciousness from matter. Whereas if you go into the quantum physical model, you realize that there is really speaking no distinction between consciousness and matter either. In a way, we are all one energy. So consciousness has its energy, matter has its energy too. And both are interconnected. And this is very important to understand. And even when I was talking about us being biological organisms or entities, that when we whatever we think here is what affects the body, right? Now it's important to understand that if my consciousness has any positive energy, the same energy will be transmitted to every cell of my body, because it's the same energy, it's the same intelligence. So in a way, if I have unhappiness or sadness in my mind, every cell of my body is going to be unhappy. Every RBC is going to be unhappy. Every WBC is going to be unhappy. Every platelet is going to be unhappy. So when you have unhappy platelets, you all know, right, what happens? Yeah, there's stickiness of the platelets, and then we have heart attacks and strokes. What happens when WBCs are unhappy? We end up with lower immunity, and then we have illnesses, or disease, or infections. What happens when RBCs are unhappy? Yeah, we have anemia, or maybe even when they go crazy, you can have polycythemia and so many other things. In other words, every cell of our body begins to vibrate in the same energy as our consciousness. Because truly speaking, when you understand the quantum physical model, there is no distinction between the energy of the consciousness and energy of matter. The second very important thing that happens from the classical physical model point of view is that it keeps us stuck in the understanding of things as absolute and limited, and that we feel constantly bound by the constraints of time and space. Yeah, because if you see, there are limitations to everything. I often say that in the physical consciousness, if you will, from even from Raj Yoga meditation or meditation in general, you what we see or what we realize is that we find that when we are in physical consciousness, when we're thinking ourselves to be bodies, then we can only do so much. We can only run so fast, we can only jump so high, we can only stay without sleep for so long, we can only eat so much or eat so little, and so on and so forth. And everything also is absolute in a way that we have 1 kilometer or 1 mile as 1 mile no matter what, 1 hour as 1 hour no matter what, and so on and so forth. Whereas as soon as you enter into quantum physical model or quantum consciousness, you find that everything becomes limitless. There are no boundaries, everything becomes infinite. There is actually no space, because in a way, if you understand, consciousness or mind is non-local, and if it is non-local, there's no distance, and if there's no distance, there is no time. So then if there's no time, you cannot be bound by time. And you truly see today most of the stress that we have is because of our time space constraints that we create for ourselves. So if I can shift, or if we all can shift our consciousness from the classical physical model to the quantum physical model, which is parallel to what Raj Yoga meditation teaches, that we can then create this limitless experience, limitless consciousness that's not bound by anything physical whatsoever. And also, just to summarize what I had mentioned just a little while back, that in the classical physical model, there is no relation between the observer and observed. In other words, the observer is totally disconnected from what is being observed. And this, in a way, if you understand it very clearly, carefully, and if you think about it carefully, you'll realize that that it kind of creates a victim kind of consciousness, that we have no control over what is happening around us. However, when you enter into the quantum physical model, you realize that as an observer, you can change the very nature and the very behavior of everything and everyone around us or around you. You see how stressful it can be when we can't really change things around us. But actually, you can, as soon as you go into the quantum consciousness. In a way, some meditation experiences call it as transcendental consciousness, or we in Raj Yoga call it as soul consciousness. Here we can make whatever changes that we want for ourselves in our lives and things around us as we deem necessary. And so this is what we call as soul consciousness, that infinite space, infinite energy, infinite potential, infinite capacities. We can experience all of that. And then when I'm saying infinite, it also encompasses infinite healing, unlimited healing. So we are connected to everything and everyone, the universal consciousness, the universal healing energy, God's healing energy, as soon as we step into that quantum consciousness from the scientific point of view, or soul consciousness from the Raj Yoga meditation point of view. And so here a few more slides about what is reality. In a way, if you think, we we constantly are creating reality for ourselves. We are reality generating organisms, if you will, or entities. And I want to give you some facts just to put all of these things in the right perspective, that we as human beings every second receive almost 400 billion bits of information. That's a huge amount of information, but we are not able to really process all of this. So most of it is rejected, and really speaking, we are able to take in only about 2000 bits of information. That's a very small fraction. But the interesting thing is that each one of us could be receiving the same 400 billion bits of information every second, but each one will take in a different part of that 2000 bits of information. So my 2000 bits could overlap with yours or could be totally different from your information that you will be taking in. So what that means is that when we are looking at the same thing, maybe exactly the same thing that we both could be looking at, or we all could be looking at, we all could perceive something totally different, totally distinct from each other. We all could be listening to the same piece of information, as music or news or whatever it is, but each could be processing it totally differently. And the reason why we process it differently is because of our past experiences, which have created new beliefs over time, and these beliefs change our perception, and based on the perception, then we take in new information which creates new experiences for us, and this is how the cycle continues. So a little bit about simulation hypothesis. We have realized now through thousands and thousands of brain scans that whether we are seeing an event in real life, in real time, or we are imagining that event, we find that the brain lights up in the same way, maybe in lesser intensity, yeah, for sure. If I'm imagining, say, for example, eating candy, eating a cake, versus I'm actually eating the cake, there will be less intensity in the first situation as compared to the second, but still the same areas will be lit up. There will not be any difference between the areas that are lit up. What that means is that for the brain, imaginary is real. So what happens is that most of the times when we create scenes of stress, because of past situations, because of things we kind of bring from the future too, because in a way we are throwing or we are projecting the present into the future, or sometimes pulling the future into the present and creating stress for ourselves. So on one hand, there could be an actual situation that could be creating stress for us, right? Like a snake as we open the door, a poisonous snake right in front of us, yeah, as we open the door, or maybe a mountain lion, a bear, or something, whatever. It could be a real danger. But most of the times, there is no real danger, but our brains or our minds or our inner consciousness begins to see non-threats as threats, and then we create reality around those threats, and it's almost as if our whole consciousness begins to get fooled, and we think that imaginary threat to be a real threat. Yeah, and that's how we then create more and more and more stress. So this is where the beliefs come into play. Our beliefs that this is a threat, yeah, or these are threats, versus our beliefs that these are not threats, we can change the way we look at reality, or the way we create our own reality. So if you want your life to be not stressed, despite the stress that we see in the world, we can still create a new imaginary, if you will, reality for ourselves, that it is non-stressful, and therefore our whole body, our whole system, our whole consciousness will begin to now live in the new reality. And this is very interesting. So on one hand, yeah, if that's making sense, that a stressful situation, even though it's not really stressful, a perceived stress creates stress for us. So perceived non-stress, perceived wonderful thing, yeah, a beautiful situation, even though it may not in reality be the best situation, or yeah, we can create that imagination for ourselves, can be a super de-stressor for us. Yeah, if that makes sense. And so here again, the observer observed effect and the macro level, that if you have two observers looking at the same situation, yeah, one could be seeing that situation as an adversity or as a curse, and the other person could be seeing it as an opportunity or as a blessing. And if you remember the Young's experiment that I was sharing, the simplest terms of where the first observer saw light as particle, so light behaved as a particle for that observer. For the second observer, he saw it as, or he or she saw it as wave, and so light behaved as wave. Yeah, so similarly, if we see a situation as an adversity or curse, that situation will become as an adversity or curse for us. And on the other hand, if we see the situation as an opportunity or a blessing, that situation will become an opportunity or blessing for us. This is the beautiful uh, dynamics of quantum physics, quantum world, that we can bring from the quantum world up to the macro level. Yeah, and this is what I like to call as quantum healing. So if that makes sense, that if I can create the consciousness that there is no stress for me, and I can step into from the physical reality of what I see to the soul reality or the quantum reality, where everything is unlimited, where everything is perfect, where I'm connected to everything and everyone, where I have access to universal consciousness, universal intelligence, to God's healing energy, then I can create the, the consciousness of a new reality for myself. And based on that reality, I can then heal myself. And once I have healed myself, then I can create the healing energy to help others as well. Yeah, makes sense. So with this, I want to end because I want to give Sister Kala the opportunity to do her meditation experience and to wrap it up. But if you have some burning question, I can answer that. But I don't think we have time for that, do we? I don't think so. Yes, Dr. Kala, I hand it over back to you. Thank you very much.
How do we take that all in? Om Shanti, I guess, is a good way to start. So I think we all have to take a few deep breaths to take in all that information. And although it makes so much sense, it's so much in contrast with what our day-to-day life is all about, morning to night, isn't it? But thank you so much, Dr. Shwetang, for making it so simple for us and such an incentive for us to understand it in those terms and to, more importantly, apply it in our real life. And obviously, application of this quantum principle is really about experimenting with that minutest unit of consciousness, our own thoughts, which we will do in meditation now. We've just heard some profound facts and truths about the way we are all made up as human beings. Such a beautiful integration of that which is physical, that which can be touched and seen and heard, and the other energy that is not physical, that cannot be seen or heard or touched. And yet, very much there. Not just a big part of me, but perhaps the original part of me. And for a few moments, we can even think of that energy the energy of that consciousness as the real me. The me that holds infinite possibilities, the consciousness that I am has the ability to create whatever thought I want to create. And further than that, the possibility to manifest whatever it is that I want to manifest. I, in the form of this pure consciousness, when I'm at this level, I really do not see lines and boundaries. I'm not aware of the clock time or the calendar day, or even the space that I'm in. This way of being in my quantum consciousness, the soul consciousness, is almost like being transported to a totally different world. A world of possibilities, and positivity. The energy here can hardly be described in words. The closest we can come to describing it is oneness. Connected, love, unlimited, and belonging. This consciousness travels into every part of the body, relaxing, releasing tension, and most importantly, helping the body to come back to its normal rhythm, helping the body to heal. In fact, I am the best healer I can find for myself. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Dr. Kala, for such a wonderful meditation. I am the best healer for myself. That was so powerful. And thank you, Dr. Shwetank, for a wonderful session. It was very, very good. And it took us from the finite to the infinite. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and hope to see you next week, same time, 8 p.m. Thank you again. Good night, and have a very nice week ahead. Om Shanti.